Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. We're coming a little early to you today, and that's because we have a very special guest joining us from Ukraine, and that is Irina. Hello, Irina Skibenko, and she is going to be joining us to talk about story for children, and she uses them often for things like language learning, but they can also help with emotional intelligence, learning things like perseverance, resilience, confidence, all of those things that we want to impart to our children. Stories are a very powerful way to do it. She's also going to be talking some about hello. She's also going to be talking
Hello.
about encouraging children to tell their own stories. Hi.
Hello. Hello.
So good to see you. And I just want to say thank you for working with us again on the figuring out the time zones and coming to us. I know it's evening in Ukraine, right?
Yes, yes, it's 7 o'clock. Not so late.
That's good. Well, I'm glad it worked out that you could join us because I think this is such an important topic and you're somebody who has a lot of experience with it. So why don't we jump in and you can introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, sure. My name is Irina Skibenko. I'm a Ukrainian and I've been teaching languages for more than 15 years now. And one of my projects is a Smart Story Space. It's a storytelling program for children at the age from 9 to 12 years old.
I think we just lost her for a minute, but again, we're live with Smart Story Space. That's Irina Skibenko, and she's just talking about some of her experience teaching English. I believe she said it was more than 15 years now, and how she uses storytelling in that process. Let me see if I can get her back on here for you. But again, we're talking about how stories can be so powerful as really active learning for children and also teaching them things like emotional intelligence and qualities like building their self-confidence when they can see themselves as storytellers. Hello. I think
Yeah, maybe something
we were
wrong
the
with the
connection.
connection.
I think we heard you were talking about your experience with teaching and that you had started Smart Story Space.
Yes, yes, because I know I was teaching children and I noticed that they are so engaged with stories that they don't want to do traditional exercises like grammar and vocabulary. But if there is an interesting story, a plot, they would read it till the end, they would ask questions, and they feel excited about it. So the learning process becomes very natural. And throughout one story, vocabulary is repeated, so they remember it better. And yeah, so stories work very well with children. That's why I started to create my stories, because I have traveled around the world and I have some stories to tell, but I adapted them for children. And at this age, they are also very interested in animals, in having a pet. So my stories are about a girl and a pet. Her pet, Dachshund Eve, they travel together. So this topic of relationship between a child and a pet is also like important for children and can make them interested to read a book.
That's so true. I know with my daughter, if there's any story that has an animal in it, then she's very interested in reading it, especially like a pet. She just loves any of those kinds of stories. And I want to talk about your stories. So I'm glad you mentioned them. But to back up a little bit about just why you decided to use storytelling. So I know you mentioned this some, but could you talk a little bit more about how you actually get across? I mean, so you're saying that stories are so much more engaging for children, but why? How are you able to actually to teach the language just through stories as opposed to how most English classes are set up?
Mhm. Um, Actually, with stories, we can do like so many activities. And even like if a student is a beginner, we can teach them some basic, like from illustrations, from telling about this book, and maybe they won't understand the whole text, but some things. Uh, and my stories are not like completely for beginners, so they are for children who have some like elementary basic level. And after they get this basic level, they can study with my program. And what we do, like in the workbook, which activities I offer my students, for example, to choose a synonym. This is the text of the chapter of the story, but children need to work with it and they have to choose an alternative. So they already think and learn like synonyms, or they can uh, they need to complete the gaps. Again, it's like for vocabulary, or one chapter doesn't have all letters like in the words, and this is for practicing spelling just to help them, and they can check it also like online or in the dictionary um, and complete them. And if, for example, if children are not very good with grammar, so what I would do, we would read the chapter and then I would ask them questions using the grammar that was used in this chapter and about the story, and then similar type of questions about their life, about their maybe holiday. So I always make this parallel, yeah, using the book and then about their life. Then we would make like a role playing, like a dialogue that the main characters have, or I would ask them to retell a chapter or a story, or two, maybe we wouldn't read till the end the chapter, but I would ask them to about their ideas how they would
Uh,
finish it. So.
oh, that's so fun. And like you said, because they're interested in the story and the plot and the relationship that the girl has with her pet and the adventures that she's going on, that keeps them going through doing what could be kind of harder work of actually learning the grammar, learning the spelling, and so on. And and if I encourage anybody who's watching who's really interested in this aspect of it, Irina and I also did an IG live on multicultural kid blogs that really focuses on storytelling for language learning. So you can go and look at that also. But today I also wanted to go into the other aspects of it, because something that you talked about is it's also really good for teaching things like open-mindedness, which I know you incorporate a lot in your stories, empathy, emotional intelligence, which are things we talk about a lot on this channel. So, can you tell us more about how stories can help
Mhm,
children learn those kinds of things?
mhm. So first of all, open-mindedness, children develop by reading and learning about the characters, about their situations, what happens to them, and how the main characters behave. And then I ask children, would you behave in the same way or no? Or maybe this situation happened to you. What did you do? So they kind of like reflect on everything that happens to the characters. This is like one point. Another point is that the characters travel in each story. They travel to a different country, and I also incorporate some cultural aspects so children can learn more about each country. So they like expand their knowledge about the world through traveling with the characters. And about emotional intelligence, it's the same. Yeah, like I ask them, we look at the illustrations and I ask them even before reading the chapter, like how do the characters feel here, like in the dark forest? It's there is nobody. How do they feel? And children try to to tell me, yeah, and to analyze. And then I ask them, like, when did you last feel in the same way? What happened? Why? So it also makes them think. And some children can answer very like it's clear for them, yeah, what they feel and why. But for many children, no, yeah, they cry, but they don't know why they are crying.
Right.
And I think it's important to understand our emotions and to teach like um, from the early age. Because even as adults, sometimes we don't know what's happening, like what exactly I don't like maybe in this situation.
Yeah.
So we do it through illustrations, like describing how they look like and how do they feel, and through again what happens to them in the story.
I love how you're always making these connections between what's happening in the story with what happens to them in their own lives, so they can really make those connections and, like you said, learn about their feelings and how they react in certain situations. Think about maybe how they would like to act if it happens to them again. We always talk about how important stories are and books are for children. And it seems like you get so much out of it. These are really great tips for anybody who's reading with their child. Really kind of gets you. You're not just getting the academic learning, but also the emotional learning. And I know, like you always say, it also helps them be open-minded and become more of a global citizen.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Because books and films and everything, these are just tools to know ourselves better and to live like a better life. That's why we can use stories like this. And as I said, like we can do.
I think she got frozen again,
My
but
first course was
please hang in there.
only
This is
like to
such a
read and maybe discuss a bit.
Mhm.
But then I developed more different tasks. I added cultural aspect, and then I also started to teach them to write their own stories.
Well, tell us more about that, because I also found that really interesting. And I know from trying to teach my own children another language, that's what they have the hardest time with. They can understand a lot, they read a lot, but to be able to speak themselves and to actually see them tell stories in another language, that's a really big step. Why was that something that was so important?
Uh, like first of all, it's like the main topic for children and for people is we like talking about ourselves. This is our main topic, and that's why writing a story about a child and maybe his or her pet becomes easy for them. Yeah, like usually writing is challenging activity at school, but because I offer them to write a story about themselves and about their pet, they feel excited about it. And because I have like already an example, yeah, I tell them, oh, I wrote a story about this girl and her pet, and you can do too. And I show them a very clear structure, and I like split it into very simple steps so it becomes kind of easy for them. And through writing, they learn to plan a story, yeah, to make like again a structure of it. They learn that, oh, there should be a plan. It is not that I can write whatever comes to my mind. Then they learn to express their thoughts in a logical, cohesive way. Yeah, not like a text message, like very
Yes.
short. Yes, so it's in the modern times, yeah, it becomes more challenging because we are used here to text very short sentences, and then here we need to like take paper and pen and write.
Again, Bridget. just here talking about storytelling and teaching children to tell their own stories and how that can sometimes be challenging today when kids are coming from a background of text messages and writing just really short, simple sentences, and that when they have to actually take pen and paper or go to the computer and flesh out a real story, that can sometimes be a challenge. Okay, I think we just lost her there. Hopefully we can get her back. She's joining us from Ukraine, so we can't be too upset about connection problems. It's such a treat to have somebody join us from so far away. And she is doing such amazing work teaching children another language, but also teaching them to be storytellers, which is really exciting, helping children find their voice and grow in their confidence. And it's really a skill, well, I should say a set of skills that we can teach them, that how to set up a story, how to structure it, and how to really get across the emotions that they want to convey. So again, we're here talking with Irina Skibenko of Smart Story Space. She's joining us from Ukraine, so we're having a few little connection issues. Hopefully she can get back with us, but just talking about how to use storytelling as a form of active learning and a way to get children really engaged, and also teach them to be storytellers as well and learn how to write their own stories. Hello.
Hello, hello.
So I think you were talking about how it can be such a challenge today when children are used to text messages and that format, which is very true. I've run into that with my children as well, that when I ask them to write something, it looks more like a text message than an actual fleshed out story. So is that a challenge to get them to write a more structured story?
Yes, I think even not to write a story, but even to write a few sentences. I know that they don't want even to write an exercise. They are so used to this, like books on the screens, and that everything goes through these visual tools. And I think it becomes really challenging. And but once they decide to join like my course, then I show them, and once they got interested in this topic, yeah, of the girl and her pet and in their adventure, like all of my students, they feel positive about writing their own story. And um, and I help them, to write like each chapter. I give them questions that direct them what they need to write. Like at first we analyze the chapter in my book and I ask them what is at the start, what is at the end, and then I give them questions to write about their characters. So they gradually write, and some even create illustrations, and so we also create ebooks like in Canva. They can add some design to it, and again it's already digital skills. They type the text of their story, so they can train again like spelling, and after that, they feel so like accomplished. They feel so proud, and they show their parents their books. And it's not like they did an exercise, right? Because and also it's not something that they do for getting a good mark, because a good mark, and I think marks are mostly for parents, yeah,
Mhm.
to
Right.
so that parents understand, okay, they do something at school,
Right.
but this is something they do like for themselves. And there was one student who wrote two or even three, no, maybe two stories. Like we read the first book and he wrote his story. We read then the second book and he read the second story. And after some time, his mom told me that he has dysgraphia. Uh,
Oh.
yeah, that it's actually not, I think, not in the worst form, but he has this problem, he difficulty to write, yeah, to think and write maybe as fast as other children do at school. And his teachers at school recommended him and his parents like not to force him to write. But it's so interesting that I didn't know this, and he, for me, it seemed he wrote his stories like without difficulties. Yeah, so he was, I think he was so interested to write about his cats.
Oh,
So he wrote his stories.
I love it that was I think that is such a great motivator for kids. Like you said, they like to talk about themselves and they love to talk about their pets as well.
Yes, yeah, like, and he rescued his cat, and he wrote about his cat and other cats. And if a child doesn't have a pet, then I ask them, maybe you want to have, or maybe you dream about something, and then they can write, like a stories that can maybe happen one day.
I love that. I love that idea because I think that is something that a lot of kids would be very motivated to write about. Do you have any tips for parents or teachers who want to incorporate stories more into their classroom?
Um, yeah, first of all, like they need to get to know better their students, their children, their interests. Yeah, what is interesting for them, what makes them excited, and then find stories that are on this topic,
Mm,
that have this topic, and maybe to get to know whom these children respect or admire, and find some characters like that so that we can really get them interested, yeah, to read this story. And then once they choose, then they can just take one of the books, yeah, about storytelling, and see like how many activities they can do,
mhm.
and choose what they feel like, what would be suitable for their students or children, because yeah, it's there is a lot.
Yeah, and I also encourage people to follow you on Instagram because you have a lot of I know you've done a lot of interviews and you have a lot of videos where you go more
Yes,
into depth into some of what we've been talking about. And of course, you have your books that you've written and people can go to remind me of the website, or I guess they can get it from the link in your bio if they are interested in the program.
yes, yes, they can get it from the link in my bio, and they can send me a direct message and ask about the books.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. You've given me a lot of ideas to use with my own kids, and I enjoyed getting to go and kind of dig into a lot of the videos that you've shared about how this can work and just how important storytelling and stories are for children. So, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody who's watching. If you joined us late, you can watch the whole thing up. It'll be up on Instagram in just a few minutes or later on our YouTube channel. Bye, everybody.
Yes. Bye bye.
Bye.